Hello, fans. It's your boy Quan here. Happy October. It is now October 1st. I am so excited beginning these videos now. And as I told you before, the month of October will be pretty much me making an inspirational spin on horror movies. But first, I'll start off on an inspirational spin on possibly why I like horror movies. Hope everybody's doing well, and let's begin. I grew up getting into horror. Got it from my mama. The first movie that scared the crap out of me is American Werewolf in Paris. For those who remember that movie, it was a step down and a little bit more comedic in a college days kind of way from its predecessor, and still is one of the most legendary horror movies in the werewolf genre, American Werewolf in London. Well, when I was in my early teens, the first transformation got me. I walked out of the room and watched cartoons in my room. Now, to go from that to enjoying and almost laughing at every jump scare in the 2016 jump scare movie Lights Out in theaters while having a friend worrying about me, I did kind of a complete 360. But to me, besides the special effects, the creatures, attempted jump scares, and look at situations or ways I wouldn't want to go out, there is a deep component in horror movies that I like. And I'm here to take you by the hand and lead you into this scary, creepy universe. First thing that most horror movies have is it's a tale of survival. Most horror movies, if it's not, even though some of them may not, go on this line, but most movies have this line of tale of survival. The characters are now in a situation that they have to do whatever they can to make it, and that is a symbol and path we're all on, technically. We're all trying to make it somehow. Sure, it's not as bad as being hunted or chased by something, hopefully, but we're making sure we and whoever's in our group is taken care of or is not in grave danger. It's always a tale of overcoming insurmountable odds, whether it's a skilled serial killer or a creature from outer space. Whoever is alive must beat the opponent. And that is one of the greatest things of the tale of survival, is that we all must, or is that we're all pretty much can relate in some way of fighting to survive. Other thing that hits on mostly every horror movie is that underneath we're pretty much facing something. They're facing something, whether it's fears or other mental or possibly physical obstacles. Overcoming what we fear will be one of the hardest battles we will face. And depending on how many fears we have, we may not even get through all of them. But to get through one of them is a feat. And the movie can translate to more than just facing your fears. The It movies. It can be about getting over past pain and hurts. It can be about how to control and live with depression. The Babadook. It can be a fear of your dark side. Most serial killers and werewolf movies have that underlying thing that technically we all have a dark side. Most of the time, it even goes over our fear of diseases. 28 days later, 28 weeks later. And in some of those cases, it even shows that technically there are monsters in the world. They're mostly human. But the fact is, we must go out there and face them because there is no other way to go through life. And most of the time, when you see the character, just as much as you see us, when we go through our fear, sure, it is a struggle, it is a fight. But after a while, when we go through some of those fears, when we can breathe, when we can focus on what we need to do, that makes us one step closer to overcoming and conquering this life. And there are a lot of analogy movies that kind of go about that or have that weird theme. One movie that pretty much just popped in my head is a Netflix movie. I don't know if you have Netflix. I've heard the controversy, and I understand. But if you have Netflix, there's a movie on there called The Ritual, and not trying to spoil too much, but basically it goes over the fear of one of the guy's past failures, pretty much, with not standing up for a friend of his. And throughout the movie, you see him pretty much suffering through that while the other guys are suffering through other stuff. There's, of course, this interesting creature that feeds off that in a way. And at the end of the movie, he conquers that fear of facing something even when he could possibly be hurt. Because I think that was his fear of pretty much risking his life for something. And at the end of the movie, he can now calmly face and risk that thing for his life because he now has that drive. He now has that accomplishment that he can do it. Granted, when you see the whole movie, if you see the whole movie, you'll see what I'm talking about. But it's a very interesting way of how horror movies, the monsters, is actually something else in the mix. It's not just, oh, it's a scary monster, oh, this is ghost. It's actually pretty much someone's fear, something that happened, something that they did, or something that they're going through, or something that has been done to them. Another thing, and I swear after this I'll go pretty much to the last thing that I think I like for horror movies and anything involved in the horror genre, is something also in the Netflix programming, is House of it's not House of Haunted Hill. It's I gotta look it up now. I deeply apologize, but it's pretty much like one of the haunted house shows on Netflix, and it has some very creepy and some scary vibes on there. But when you look at pretty much certain people's ghosts, it is not really a depiction of, ooh, that's a scary ghost or that's a scary way to go. It's actually pretty much a fear of ending up like this person, a fear of your past, a fear of someone that mistreated you and it just affected you. And if you've seen the show that I'm talking about, I'll probably remember it right after this, or I'll probably put it in the comments or something. The fear of a past decision that you made that still haunts you. And horror movies have that effect. I think there's no better way to kind of display that, is kind of in a horror format, because we all have that. We're all afraid of something, and pretty much I think horror movies hit that on the butt. And last but not least, most horror movies have something of a transformation. After these two things, after they go through a survival situation, after they pretty much face their fears or other mental, possible other physical obstacles, it's now that they go through a transformation. They know how to conquer that fear. How they know what to do, and how they know what to do that is necessary to survive. To even accept the monster within. they have a new perspective, thus a new way of life. Because of what they went through, because of what they survived, because of what they defeated, they know that the monsters are in the dark, are real. But they also know now how to slay them. And that's pretty much, I think, the ending of most horror movies. Now, in some horror movies, and this is me going to go into a spiel. This is my horror movie nerd showing out, so be warned. Um, in most horror movies, they have that 3 points right there, and sometimes they add another point, but or it's like a reflection of society in some way. But in sometimes in horror movies, they do have a what I like to call the old school horror movie of no one makes it out alive, and in some cases, in some cases, if you go into that, it's basically means like everything we're trying to fight, we're all going to go in the end. It's all going to happen. And on one hand, it's like I'm cool with that, but thanks to a horror movie friend of mine who's also a deep horror movie buff, he explained to me, and it pretty much catches on that horror movies are starting to go in that direction, and he doesn't like it because in the end, the audience needs to breathe. And a good example of the audience needs to breathe is Jordan Peele's horror movie Get Out. That societal, that racial look into a horror movie lens of losing your body and whatnot. And if everyone's seen it by now, you should. And everyone, if you don't know, there was a alternate ending, and that alternate ending wasn't as positive. In fact, it was like deeply, deeply negative. At the end of that movie, instead of the ending that possibly everyone saw. And the reason why Jordan Peele made that alternate ending instead of the ending is pretty much going off the same premise that my friend talked about, which is basically he wanted to let the audience breathe. And in some cases, I feel that talk of breathing is giving that audience time to breathe, to give that character, the accomplishment. Like, oh, they made it. They defeated the odds. They pretty much defeated pretty much this group of people, that monster, that ghost, that thing. And that's always a little bit inspirational in a horror movie because, life is already kind of dark on itself. And even though horror movies are kind of dark, that's pretty much most of the time the uplifting thing about certain horror movies, or about most horror movies, is that in most horror movies, yes, it goes through those 3 points that I mentioned: tale of survival, they facing fears or other mental obstacles, and a transformation. But at the end, when they go through all this, that transformation, they get to breathe. They get to settle into their new self. You get to see them kind of make it through the world as that new person, as that new being, capable of new things. And that's what I'll leave it on. So I hope this helps out, gives into the mind of, at least for me, the mind of Quan on why I like horror movies and why you should be selective and also jump into, some horror movies this month. I mean, especially this is the month. This is the month that I am big on horror movies. Like I'm talking, I warn people. Yeah, I warn people that pretty much on horror movies, I go watch horror movies almost every day. I think about going to haunted houses, even though right now it's a little bit of a stretch, and just even, just scare a few people. But that's just me. That is my dark side. That's a part of my dark side. Now you know it. But I hope this helped out a little bit. I hope you all enjoyed it. Once again, thank you for your support. Thank you for listening. If this hit in some way, please go to my YouTube channel, Mind of Quan. Look up this video, leave a comment, and let me know how you feel. But as usual, hope you have a good day. Hope this helped out, and happy October. Deuces.